The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 33 of the Drum Candy podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We are wrapping up 2021 with one of my favorite drummers and overall musicians and artist, Billy Martin. If you're not familiar with Billy's work, he's a longtime collaborator with the trio Medeski, Martin and Wood. He's a prolific composer, percussionist, visual artist, educator, record producer. He runs a nonprofit at the moment, so go to billymartin.net to follow along with what he's up to. There's always some new cool projects in the works. This episode, we go deep into the creative process and improvisation, and we get a little bit of gear talk in. So let's get right to it. The great Billy Martin. All right, I'm gonna just fire away if you're ready.
Yeah, man.
Bright and early. Let's talk gear. No.
Yeah.
Man, my first question is, what are you currently working on? I feel like you're always moving and morphing and changing, and as a record label owner, as a visual artist, as a musician, as an educator, what's currently on your plate?
Well, this time of year, right? We're wrapping up everything, most people. So I actually have some time to think a little bit to myself. So I'm actually thinking about what's the next thing. And it could be, I have a number of things it could be. So I'll start with what I wrapped up, and what's continues on with is I'm running a nonprofit called Creative Music Studio, which is a legendary nonprofit. It was started in 1971 with Carl Berger, Ingrid Sertzo, and Ornette Coleman. And really all of this started in the early 70s upstate in Woodstock, New York. And everybody would come up and teach there for weeks at a time, like Don Cherry, Nana Vasconcelos, Olatunji, Pat Metheny, Dave Holland, Jack DeJohnette, Eddie Blackwell was there once, Carla Bley, a lot of jazz and experimental artists, and also classical and electronic people too. They had percussion ensemble groups too. And so I'm running, and I've been running that. I'm like the CEO, executive director, and it's been an incredible privilege, and getting it sort of up to the next generations and stuff. So I'm in my 5th year running that. So that's going really well. I really enjoy that. Actually this year we had Will Calhoun from Living Color. We've had Calvin Weston. We've had Bob Moses. These are people that are friends of mine that I know. And then I'm just talking about drummers, and then Ciro Baptista teaching online or at workshops upstate. The other things, is I'm teaching at the New School. I'm a professor at the New School, so I teach improvisation, on improvising ensembles. I teach rhythmic analysis, and hopefully that'll continue. Just one day a week, I go out to the city and teach for a day there. I've been enjoying that a lot, actually. I didn't think I would, but I am. And I teach privately here in my studio, the Herman House in Englewood, New Jersey. This is a separate studio I built, and it's named after my first drum teacher, Alan Herman. We did that DVD movie, Life on Drums, just a pretty much educational kind of masterclass about, my process, the creative process, more about how I, kind of what I think is important. And so Alan and I continued to sort of think about, where can we continue this sort of Life on Drums thing, classroom lessons and stuff. And so I built this. He helped me invest in building and establishing a space, private space that people can come. So sometimes we'll teach workshops here or private lessons. So that's pretty much been it. Managing my record label hasn't been too difficult. I released a record called Guilty, where I'm playing bass and drums, and then a little bit of piano, and having guests on that. So what I'm looking into this year, going into this year, is perhaps working on another book. I've been thinking about this for a couple of years already. my book Rhythm Claves of African Origin needs another edition, and I'm excited because that's just been growing and growing with all the teaching I've been doing, and also applying it to compositions and things like that, and working with ensembles. So there's the rhythm book. I hope I can get a second one out. I don't know, but if I find the time, that would be something I'd love to do. And then, just producing music and continuing to develop myself as a composer, recording here. And actually, the one project I'm waiting on, like I'm in the middle of, is a movie that I'm scoring, and it's called Mary, and takes place in New York, and I can't really say much about it right now, but I'm waiting to kind of start to see the footage. So that'll be fun. It's an indie film, but it should be pretty cool. So I'm excited about that.
Do you score it from an improvisational place?
Always, in general, I'll either take material that I have laying around that I've, made notes about. Like maybe I played the piano and I came up with this melody or this theme, or the guitar, or this any material that I have laying around that I've sort of is unfinished. And I think, oh, this kind of works, then I'll develop that more. I'll flush it out and score it in different ways, but just pretty much everything that I approached as far as, creative process is improvising. It all comes from the improvising. It's not like I hear a melody. Sometimes I'll hear something in my head, I'll sing it into my phone, and it'll turn into, it'll get hashed out. But even that to me is improv. When things come to you, they come to you in the moment. That's pretty much improvising. So, yeah. Improvising is the thing. I mean, I think every composer really understands that they're just kind of experimenting, whether it's on the piano or on the drums or any instrument. They're kind of just experimenting with sound, and then all of a sudden, things start to come out, and they're composing. So that's my approach.
Yeah, that's usually the scary step for me. The nothingness of sitting down, and then when does an idea become something worth flushing out? I don't know. For me, it's a sensation. I'm not very good at it. So I'm going to ask you, when you sit down,
you got to stop saying you're not good at it, because that's just putting up a barrier right there. Like you're like, I'm not good at that. Everybody's good at it. Like we're all humans we're just inherently creative people. It's just a matter of tapping into it and then just. But you said, it's getting a feeling. It's a feeling. If you get excited about it, don't knock it down. Just keep flushing it out. And you may spend 5 minutes on it. You may spend an hour. You may spend a day, weeks, and then later you may say, "Oh, what a piece of junk that was," But the process of doing it and learning about yourself is part of the process of moving forward. So that's why I love teaching improvisation. It's not an easy thing to teach. There aren't many people out there that do it well. And it's one thing I can say about myself, that I think that I have a way of getting people to sort of get comfortable with improvising and experimenting. And it comes down to just making sound, so that you're not dealing with genre or style, idiom or anything. You're creating your own style and idiom, and it'll go in that direction. But at first you don't do that. But I understand also the fear of the unknown. For sure, there's nothing worse to me than be in an ambiguous place and be like, what's happening? What's going to happen? Waiting and just feeling like I have no idea. But because I've been improvising so much, and it's a performance thing, I've done tons of it with Medeski Martin Wood in front of a lot of people. It can get scary, but it means you care, but when you start getting used to it, it's sort of you start to look forward to that, actually. And I did. I realized there was a certain a crossroads for me where it was am I going to go this way where everything is composed and I'm just playing what's dictated to me? Or am I going to go this way where it's I'm the artist, I'm the composer, and, I'm going to work with like-minded people who are open to just letting things happen. And so I went I'm in this direction now where it's if you want to work with me, you've got to accept me for who I am, and you've got to let things happen in the moment, and then we can develop it together. Like it's a collective thing. So if I'm with other people, it's a collective thing. I do lead groups and things like that where I have an idea, but pretty much into like hearing other people's ideas and seeing what we come up with.
So is there like a lack of judgment whether that was a good improvisation, that was a not so good improv? Are they all equal? How does it mean?
No, there's no lack of judgment. It's not a lack of judgment. It's just there's open to opportunity to like, oh, I didn't know like that's possible. Those kind of things, when those things happen, or like someone doesn't have the greatest technical ability, but actually they have a really good idea, or they played something a certain way that someone else you may have worked with wouldn't do. So it's like, it has to do with ideas. It has to do with ideas that people have and not about their technical ability so much, So you can get a bunch of people in the room that like could execute things perfectly, but like then there's no real interesting idea. They're not really saying anything, So the judgment comes more from me from being like, let's just be open to all of it, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the shitty stuff, the bad ideas, the good ideas. Let's just get it all happening, and then let's hash it out. It's a process, and I think everybody that gets together and works on improvisation, it's a different process because everybody has a different personality and they have different hangups and different things. But I would say, in general, the approach is to be open, but also to be really clear about whether you feel like that's cool, that's a cool thing, I want to work on that, or whether that's like, nah, I've heard that before, that's a cliche thing. Sometimes the cliche ideas work. It's just all, people are kind of like have their own perspective, personalities. And so you have to kind of deal with that. Everybody else's kind of judgment on what is good or what is bad. But working collectively with Medeski, Martin, Wood, that was a democracy. That was harder than having one person just say, that's good, try something else, and say, okay, we got it. This is what I want. As opposed to 3 people in a room or more, right? But with MMW, it was 3. We were like, I don't know, what do you think? And then it was like, we've kind of had to like collectively make a decision. And sometimes if one person really wasn't happy with it and the other 2 were, it was kind of like, well, majority, like, let's just move on. Like, we think this is cool, and all right. And then the other one just says, okay, man, like, just I'm here for the whole, So there's many ways to work those things out, but in general, it is kind of keeping it open about it, and not being like harshly judgmental, but also not being like spineless and just like, oh, anything, okay, whatever. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings ever, but we want to maybe just say, hey, this is what I think. I think that's a great idea, and I think I'm, blah blah blah. Like, let's have a conversation about what just happened. What was I expect? That's what I do in my improvising classes. It's like, we'll just play for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And then I'll say, hey, what were you thinking? And then it's amazing what people think. Some people are like, I thought it was going to go this way, or I was trying to make it go this way. And then it's like, no, you don't want to control it too much. And there's so many conversations we have, but we get to learn about how we think. And then the other person hears what the other person was thinking, and all of a sudden they're like, everybody starts to feel like, oh, it's okay then,
How do you feel about being disruptive in an improvisation?
Well, disruptive is a good thing if it's a positive, direction. Basically for me, I think basically I would say I feel good about it because someone has to be disruptive, or someone has to lead. To me, when I hear disruptive, I don't think negative. I think it's like there's something that needs to change, and someone needs to step out and do it, right? So you have to lay yourself out there on the chopping block, and whether you're judged for doing something wrong, right or wrong, you have to do it. If you're going with your heart, when you're sincere going with your heart and saying, I'm going to take it this way. I'm going to slow the tempo down, or I'm going to stop playing. Those kind of things are catalysts, right? For like everybody going, whoa, okay, new section, or like, oh, I'm just, or the drums just dropped out. So I feel like you have to be disruptive, but not to be noticed or not to be, to get attention. It's more about like, we've been playing like this for like 5 minutes. Like it's just static. Let's make a change, I'm not sure I answered that.
Yeah, no, that's kind of, because I always feel like maybe you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but like, hey, that was cool, but can you do something else now? Let's go here.
Yeah. And that really, it goes both ways. It's like people will get frustrated if they feel like you didn't give it a chance. And I've been through that, I've been through that with, situations where people feel like, wow, why did he just change up? It was really nice. We could have gone another 5 minutes with this vibe. It's a meditative trance thing. It's like, well, that we didn't kind of lay the rules out that way. So that person learns like, yeah, I just got to chill, and just like let it go in that direction. Like when, later I can create my own thing like that, and go on for half an hour just playing this groove, fine. Mm-hmm. But it's a process that everybody is kind of learning together.
Do you suggest introducing improvisation early in the journey as a musician? I feel like especially drummers, we get caught up in having to learn how to play the instrument before we take any chances or try our own ideas. Like, where do you insert it? Like if you had a 8-year-old kid who's just learning how to play paradiddles, would you urge them to improvise or stick with the technique for a couple of years first?
Yeah, I would definitely I would definitely instill more of the creative ideas, because I really feel like from there, you're going to hit a certain, you're going to get it, that student at that age, they're starting to get conditioned at that age. It's a really rough time, mm-hmm. But when they're younger, they're kind of a little bit more malleable. And like, if you instill that sense of like, it's okay, this is the part where you can just do whatever you want. And then you could sort of, by example, they could kind of like run into some issues where you're like, well, now check this out. Like if you play, alternate, your hands, and then that leads to like, check out this, this book. If you really want to get even more precise, and you can study stick control or whatever the book is, or do your paradiddles. But I think they go together. I think a lot of creative things, a lot of experimental improvising ideas basically invent their own technique. It's like that term, the mother of invention. It's like, yeah, like you have this thing just happens, and then you're like, well, how can I play it again? And how can I, how do I develop this? And then you start to create your own technique, or you get a teacher to help you. So I really believe that instilling a creative, improvisational side early on is really, really important. It's like, to me, it's the sooner the better, because you're helping establish a foundation for that individual to like be a leader, to be a composer, to be an artist, and someone who can bring ideas into a situation, as opposed to you just come to the situation with your technique, and you just are someone else's, tool to execute things. And if you have both things, then you've got more to give in a way, or to contribute. I also think it just leads to other things in life. Like you learn about how to make choices and decisions in the moment in your life that has nothing to do with music. It opens up that side of yourself where it's like you have to like maybe take chances, or you have to kind of make decisions, and you don't know where to go, A or B, and they're both could be good, but I don't know. And sometimes you just have to kind of improvise your way through life, designing things. Like for me, I build things, right? It's like I've learned that like because, you know, I see possibilities, and then I have to back it up with the engineering. Like if I want to build this studio, like I have certain creative ideas and I'm like, well, but now I've got to actually build it, and it has to be safe. So it's like, I take the creative idea and then I back it up with the technical part and then make it happen, you know, and some things have to be adjusted. And I think it's the same thing with being a drummer. It's like, or being a musician, it's just like, you've got this vision and it's like, how do I get there? You know, like sometimes you could do a lot of things drummers can do, just hitting things and making sounds. It's not rocket science, you know, but then there's a certain point where you're like, well, I want to be able to go quickly from here to here, you know, and not, you know, kill myself, you know, and hurt my hands, you know, then technique comes in. I was lucky. I had the technique thing the first couple of years of practicing. I wasn't creative at all, except for maybe I was drawing and stuff, but like I was not a creative person. So the first 2 years I did have straight up stick control, boom, boom, technique stuff. I was learning about physics. I was learning about effortless, you know, and later the creative stuff came in. That was just what happened. But I think it's important to get introduced early on, but either way, it doesn't matter. So whenever you can introduce the creative aspect of experimenting and, you know, and working on your, you know, getting a student to think like an artist, doesn't matter how old they are. They could be 90 years old. It's just whatever, you know, it's like, but the younger, the better, I think, just to introduce it as part of the lesson.
What do you do with someone who has only played along to Rush Records for 20 years and they come to you and say, I want to be more creative? How would you break that ice?
Well, first of all, I don't have enough experience with Rush, like what that is, like exactly what that person's life is like. I'd have to hear them play. But breaking the ice, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just someone who's only learned, you know, note for note songs and never written anything or improvised really before.
Well, I would, you know, there's two things. Number one, I would just say, just play, you know, just play a solo for me. Whatever it is you want to play, like it's whatever you want to play. I don't care what it is. If it's something from Rush or whatever, I wouldn't even say that, but I would just be like, just play, make some sound, play something on the drums. Let me hear you play. Want to hear how you hit the drums and all that stuff. And it may come out sounding like something straight out of a Rush record. And and then I would say the second part would be, you know, that's cool. That's part of your vocabulary. You've learned all of that whole language. Then the number two step would be, now let's add to that vocabulary that you already have. Let's add to it. What other music, you know, are you listening to that you're practicing to or that you're studying? And then that becomes part of your vocabulary. Then you mix up Rush with whatever other band you listen to, right? And then it's like, oh, you got this and that. Now you start like listening to a lot of different music, and all of a sudden you have all these choices, ways to, you know, it's no difference than like, you know, we're speaking English language now. We're using words and we're using tones and phrases and things the way we express them freely, you know, depending on the situation. So I would just say, yeah, just build on that. But then maybe number two, part three, or, you know, part three, I would say, forget about everything. Don't play anything that you know. Just start making sound, like make sound. And it doesn't have to be rhythm. It doesn't have to be melody, or it could be one or the other. It can be just like, you know, long tones, create a mood, you know, and a landscape. Think about, you know, what does rain sound like, or the wind, or, you know, a volcano, whatever, anything you can use as kind of an idea to express yourself. You know, that's what it was for me. My first lesson with Michael Carvin at Drummers Collective was the turning point in my life. He said, play me a solo. And I was at that point where it's like, I could only play music that I knew, right? So I could only recall things and make reference to something. And I was like, I don't know, what do you mean? Like solo, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, just play me like, just play me, whatever, like play me a sunset, play me a blah, blah, blah. He started to mention things that were referenced. And a light, went on right away. I was like, oh, I can just, use my imagination, and that began a really sweet little, I don't know, semester with him, developing, creating my own drum compositions, solos. So there's lots of ways to do that, but that would be the way I would just, there's nothing wrong with learning, being so, obsessed with a certain band and a certain drummer, but there's a certain point where you have to move on and you have to kind of like open your ears to other things, follow your heart, and also do and express yourself freely. If you're an expert on Rush music, why can't you just play your own personal expression of Rush ideas? Make them your own.
So many different ways to take this, but I have one specific path here. How do you feel about sitting down and like the direction you take with each improvisation? Is it okay to just sort of take the same approach until you exhaust it? Or should each time you should say, well, I always start with mallets. Maybe I should start with brushes today. Do you predetermine anything, or is it just, well, every time I kind of start soft and get loud, I want to keep doing that for a while until I can't do it anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it's all, I think that the thing is not to set yourself up with any system where it's like, I have, you don't have to do anything you did yesterday, but if you want to do something that you did yesterday, do it a little differently today. Do that thing that you love so much, but do it differently. So if you played with mallets and you really enjoyed it, play with mallets again, if that's what you're being pulled towards. So I think it's really important to have the spirit of like excitement about working on something. And there's freedom to it. Like, oh, wow, I'm going to work on my soloing. What am I going to do? And then it's like, well, I really enjoyed playing with mallets yesterday. So I don't know, maybe I want to do that. And then there's another part of you that might say, hey, you know what? Let's try the brushes today, but with that spirit, whatever it might be. So I don't have a straightforward answer, but that does make me want to bring this up. When I play a solo show, it's usually an hour set, 50 minutes to an hour, solo drumming, I have a lot of percussion instruments too, so I can pick up like hand percussion and do a little piece of just that, and talking drum, whatever it might be. I have all kinds of things around me. It's not just, sometimes it is just the drum set, but I do, sometimes I go in, I say, you know what, let me give it a little form. Let me give I'm drawing a little blank today. I'm a little tired, like I'm not sure I'm going to be able to follow through in the moment. So just in case, let me write on each index card here. I'm going to write mallets, credit card, index card, next index card, brushes, sticks, hands, only cymbals, kick and snare and hi-hat only, percussion. And then I have like 7 to 15 cards of just basically things that would be the launch pad to get me at least, I know I'm going to do it. And as soon as I start playing with mallets, it's a mood. It's like, it really does kind of like put you it gives you a feeling, right? Or with brushes. And so, that sets off kind of like a certain feeling, it's a texture, it's a timbre, your instrument sounds different with these different mallets. And then you can sort of like shape your thing that way. And what's important about that is that like you have a sequence of music based on prescribed sounds. So you say, hey, this is no cymbals. This is a piece with no cymbals. That's the only thing. Don't play any cymbals for the entire 5 minutes. right? And then the next piece is like, play mallets, play whatever you want. And then you do that for 5 minutes. And then you're creating sort of, you're creating form in your solo set. And that's kind of a cool way. So I wanted to bring that up because I think that's important. Like, you can tell yourself today, I'm going to, you can have a thing in your calendar. This is my workout. This is my schedule for the week. This is what I do. Mallets on Monday, brushes on Tuesday, hands on whatever for soloing. And then you can just have a prescribed thing. But what you do with those things, it can become daunting if you're like, but what am I going to play? Am I going to play fast, slow, loud? No, it's just like what you're feeling. So besides prescribing yourself those things, which I think is kind of good because you can cover a lot of bases, but you could also just say, what am I feeling in the moment right now? What's pulling me? Like, what I'm looking at my stick bag, I'm looking at my instruments, like, oh, let me grab that. That to me is, I think the most important thing is to be in touch with what you are being drawn to in the moment. Because if you think an hour later, an hour before, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do at 10 a.m. or, when I get on stage, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my improvisation. You're not really improvising, because when you get up there, you might go, oh my God, I don't feel like playing that thing I said I was going to play. I want to do that, and that's the beauty and the freedom of improvising, is like to tap into the energy at the moment, and that's what I learned a lot about Medeski Martin Wood. We would have a whole set. We would say, here, we're going to play this, that, and that. We're going to improvise here. We'd have these little interludes to tunes. We'd have the set in order, and we'd go out there, and we wouldn't play the tune that right away. John would just start playing something else, and we'd be like, oh my God, like what? And we learned that, like, even we had a set there to fall back on. But if we were feeling something in the moment, one of us would disrupt the situation and be like, oh man, he's going into think, or he's going into whatever, chinoiserie, or whatever the tune is. And it's like, boom, that sets it off, because someone felt really strongly, wow, we're up here, the energy, the people, the stage, the room, all those things are making me want to go here. And then you do it, and everybody jumps on. So I think it's tapping into the moment is like really part of the creative magic, But then the other part is just like saying, yeah, today mallets, if that's, that's what you need. And that's what I've done. I've had these index cards, written ideas, and then I'll go out there and I'll pull one out, or I'll go through them and I'll say, oh yeah, this one, I'm feeling this one.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Your setup seems to be put together based on these moments of inspiration. Like, it's an unusual kit. You've got a Nyabingi bass drum, usually, right? Concert toms.
Sometimes, yeah.
One cymbal, usually, and then assorted instruments from around the world. What makes you add something to your setup?
Just that I need to change it up because I'm getting tired of the sounds. And I want, and sometimes it's like, well, I want a more melodic kit, like right now in the Herman House, I have a kit that Johnny Craviotto built for me. And I have the old Rogers kit that I played, the people know I played a go-go on Schofield. And the go-go set is a Rogers kit that's like, I took you said concert toms, I took the bottom heads off, and it has like, for me, it's just more of a timbale kind of like, it has a punchy kind of more rock groove thing. And so when I'm feeling that, and when I'm feeling like I just want to like play a beat to my bass line that I looped, I go to my Rogers kit. Sometimes I go to the Craviotto kit because I want to play more melodically. And so when I change something on my kit, it's usually just because, I want a tighter snare. I'm going to use my little 10-inch snare, because I want that punchy thing, and I want the contrast between the boomy Nyabingi drum and the punchy 10-inch. And it creates this, for me, like hip hop kind of like boom snap thing, Other times it's like, no, I want to have a match kit. the Craviotto kit was all built to just kind of be one instrument, like a piano.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all, you can really go anywhere with that. So it's just like, again, it's like what I'm feeling in the moment. It has to do with the music that I'm playing or the mood I'm in and stuff like that. So it's always evolving, right? You see that. Like, I don't have the Nyabinghi out right now. I did have it out not that long ago, which was rare. Medeski actually asked me to break the Nyabinghi out for something, some recording, and I did, but it had been away for 2 years.
So what is that? I don't know. What is the name of that drum? It's like a bass. You're using it as a bass drum. What does that give you that a bass drum doesn't?
It's what people say, it's kind of like an 808 kick sound. Like, people have that roll of an 808 that boom, has a longer, very low, long note. So it gives me more, a sort of a deeper tone and a longer note. It's a fatter, bigger, longer note. And at the time when I bought it, it was in the 80s. Before I was playing in any bands like Medeski, Martin Wood, I was into Brazilian samba, and it was a drum that I would hold, although it's a Nyabinghi drum. It's not supposed to hang it like a marching drum, but I did for a while. It was nearly killed myself, but it was acted as a sort of drum, which they use in the samba. Bing, kaboom, 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 boom, kaboom, kaboom, kaboom. It's like the heartbeat. So when I went to Jamaica with my friend, I saw the Nyabinghi shack, the Rasta drummers, all the drums were in the shack and they were beautifully colored. And I was like, I have to have that. That's my sort of drum. And then years later, I broke it out and started playing it with MMW, and that became like a thing, became part of our sound. And it was really about like the 808 kick, the hip hop stuff that I was into and the sounds that I was hearing on other music. I wanted to have it live. So that's really what it gave me. But it's not it works for anything, but there's a certain point where like it was just, they had these big, rebar, like these giant nuts. You have to use a big wrench, and it's like it's goat skin, and the skin starts slipping off, and you got to put a big rock in front of it because it doesn't have any pegs. So years and years of that on the road, it was fun. But my favorite kick right now, one of the two favorite kicks right now, is the old Rogers Luxor bass drum that I have. It's just got a lot of the old Rogers kicks have the best bass drum sound. Like, it's just, I don't care what you do. It's just, they sound good. They just carry through. You can hear it on my Instagram posts. Like, you'll hear when I'm playing the Rogers kit, that kick drum is like, people are like, how did you record it? And I'm like, I put my phone in front of it. I didn't do anything, Right. And other times, and it depends where you put your phone sometimes, but like that, it doesn't matter where I put my phone with the Rogers drums. They record really well. The Craviotto, my other favorite bass drum, is the one that Johnny made me. It's a 10 by 20 inch. So it's a shallow 10 inch. It looks like a marching bass drum. Mm-hmm. And Johnny lent me his kit a few times when I did West Coast tours, and it was his first prototype Craviotto kit. And he had two kicks. One was a 10 by 20, and the other one was like a more regular size, like a deeper size. And I was like, it showed up at the first gig. I don't know, we were in San Francisco or something, and I was like, oh man, I tried both, and I was like, the 10 by 20 was like, this is it. This is the answer to everything. I was like, there's something about the shape of the drum and the way it was made and everything. And I called them up and I said, Johnny, I got to have this. I know you made me a whole kit already based on my other drum sets, but he was like, sure, Billy. And it's like, and then eventually, it showed up, and like, I love it. It's like, it's my favorite kick drum, because you can get it to, sort of, ring out and sound boomy, like an 808. Or like an old fashioned, big band bass drum or something, maybe. And you can also just kind of like, muffle it, and it's still got the punch. There's some gear for you. There's some gear talk.
Yeah,
for you.
right. What do you travel with gear wise, and then also how do you approach dealing with a rental kit that you don't know what you're in store for?
Yeah, I travel with a suitcase that will fit a 16-inch cymbal.
Okay.
And I'm not so picky about hi-hats, so I usually don't bring the hi-hats. I usually just hi-hats are usually safe to kind of like pick up somewhere, in a rental situation. And they're heavy, so like my suitcase has a lot of metal percussion, might be Morpheat stuff, and other pieces, shards of metal that I like to play and hit. And then there's like wood pieces and things and shakers and go-go bells and whistles and atmospheric sounds. So all of that is in my suitcase with my stick bag and a cymbal and a ride cymbal, my 16-inch A ride. And then I approach renting drums like, well, first thing I try to ask them for is a vintage sounding kit.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer if there's anything, if I have to choose one type of kit, it would be like, yeah, give me a Gretsch Catalina or a, more modern made one that sounds like an older kit. Some people like will find me, forgive me for like, I don't have all the dates, but I'm starting to learn, and I'm 58. I'm starting to learn the Ludwig, like 1967, or like, it seems to be like the late 60s. Ludwigs had a sound that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
There's great Slingerland kits, Gretsch kits. But basically it's like, much rather have a jazz kit, even if I'm playing a rock gig, because I just want to have the melody and open tone sound. I can always like tone it down with my muffles or whatever. And basically it's like whatever kit I get, no matter how shitty it is, I'm going to let it play me. I'm not going to change my style because I'm Billy Martin, I'm Millie D. I'm going to play the way I play. My rhythms were not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But the drum set will inform me to like, hey, like it sounds better when you do this. You can't, it's like, maybe it's not as melodic. So let's get into more creative beat movement or vice versa. It's very melodic and it's like, and I'll play it. I celebrate the moment of, okay, I'm dealing with this drum sound. It's may not be my favorite thing or maybe a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just kind of like let it play me in a sense, I used to get really frustrated with rental kits and get really, angry about it. Like, how am I going to play this piece of crap? And that was just my whining and complaining. And I realized that like, you can play anything. Drums. We got easy drummers. I don't even need a drum set to create a beat,
Mm-hmm.
Give me anything. It's like, that's the kind of what I've learned over the years. But of course it's nice to have a good sounding snare, a nice punchy kick, and then if you're lucky, some toms that have a good vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Cymbals are hard to rent. I don't recommend renting cymbals. Hi-hats are easy, pretty much.
So I only have a couple more questions. I appreciate you hanging with me today. So I was watching a stream you did earlier this year, and you did a couple improvisations where they started with looping. You were looping some percussion. I couldn't hear a definitive pattern that you were looping, but then it sort of took on its own pattern in a way. How do you, I mess with looping a lot myself, and I always try to make it some sort of rhythm that I can find some sort of definitive pulse to it or whatever. You didn't seem to be doing that, but yet you were playing beats and things over top of it. So what is your approach to that live looping concept?
Yeah, I love this. This is my new thing in the past couple of years. Well, I have this concept called rhythmic harmony. And in the rhythm book, it's very clear. It's very specific. Like everything has a relationship pulse-wise, with it 3 and 2 together,
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling 6 and 4 and the claves and all that stuff. And it's all kind of locked in a grid, but you can still be expressive with it. But basically rhythmic harmony is just like that. It's like there's 2 or more cycling patterns that are playing together. And the more you add to them, the more sophisticated it gets, feeling gets, So That's very polyrhythmic, very counterpuntal, but I call it rhythmic harmony. Rhythmic harmony is just polyrhythm. But so that's the locked in kind of groove side of it. The other side is you can have a pulse or a sound just looping like a recording. It could be someone talking, it could be anything, right? But it's looping. So it's a recording that just plays and plays and plays. So each one of those loops can have it doesn't have to be like a perfect time, but it could have a feeling that makes me want to play a beat a certain way. Mm-hmm. And that this is truly like, it's not science, it's art. This is the difference between like figuring it out scientifically or technically and it just being an artistic expression. It's like a feel thing. So I might play something on the guitar, bass, or on the mbira or percussion, and I'll loop it, but it's like an imperfect loop. Imperfect, that's a relative word. But the idea that it doesn't have like a specific time signature, like it's not in 6, it's not in 3, it's not in 4. It's like skipping. It's like, but that loop is a phrase. There's a phrase and it has a feeling to it, has a shape to it. Right. And there might be some sub-rhythmic expression in that. Now I'm getting a little too maybe, scientific, but this might help. And all I do is I pick up on the feeling I'm getting while I listen to it, and I'll just basically jump in with a beat. And the beat is what really establishes a referential point mostly for people to go, oh, I hear the beat. But what the hell is that loop, right? The loop is kind of just keeps ending up in a different part of the beat each time it comes around. That's something I honestly learned by listening to certain kind of hip hop stuff where it was like, it wasn't even in the key of the song. The rhythm was different every time. And you hear it in any kind of jazz form or rap stuff, like people will just be rapping or playing a solo over a pulse, and it'll sort of like come in a different place, but it'll be the same melody or the same idea, right? So this is kind of like that. I just will play something. Sometimes I specifically will make it, I'll play as a demonstration to people. I'll be like, just play some weird, wacky, out of time phrase. And then I just play it over. It's like, and then you just boom. You just play a beat and you hold that beat. Don't let that. Whoops. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. It said my phone's going to die soon. And the beat is really what creates the sort of reference point. And then that phrase is kind of, it's really cycling, in its own rate. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think of it holistically. It's like, think about the planets and the sun rising and the sun setting. We're going through our life doing things. Some things we have clocks and things are in time, but the sun and the moon and the stars and everything, it's constantly like, they're all kind of have their own cycle that's really specific. It's not all locked in the clock time. And there's a harmony to that. So the rhythmic harmony concept is like, play something weird into a loop. It could just be a drone. That's the other thing. It's just, right? And then you just play a beat over it, So this is the beginning of like, there's a lot of stuff that's happening compositionally for me with that. I've got groups, I've got orchestras and ensembles playing their own cycling loops or pulses, and we all do it together, and I conduct them, and it like creates this amazing rhythmic harmony together. And then we might have someone solo over, and we have someone play a beat, and then the bass player goes with the beat, and they start to build. So it's like sort of a little bit of controlled improvisation thing I do. But it's based on that concept. Yeah, just looping a part that's not in time. It's just a melody or a glitchy phrase. And then you just play the beat that you're feeling in the moment. And then you can even change your beat to another beat. That's the other thing. Hey, let me try this tempo now. Let me try. And you'd be surprised, listen to it, record yourself. You'd be like, wow, there's some moments there where like, it just has a thing, magic.
That's beautiful.
Alchemy.
Well, I thank you so much for hanging. So if anyone wants to reach out to you about lessons or keep in touch with your nonprofit and workshops, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah. Billy at billymartin.net and Illy Beats, ILLYBEATS at Instagram.
Awesome. Everyone go check it out. Get the book Rhythm. And I'm looking forward to part 2 because I practice out of the current one all the time. And we'll talk off air about me getting hooked up with the lesson.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be
Billy.
on your show. Good luck with it.
Thanks. Well, that's it for this week's episode. That's it for the Drum Candy podcast in the year 2021. So thank you all for listening. Your support has been greatly appreciated. Never thought we'd make it this far, but here we are. We're going to keep on rolling into 2022. We've got a bunch more drummers to reach out to. So if you have any suggestions for guests or future topics, don't be afraid to email me at mike@drumfactorydirect.com, and I'll do my best to get everyone on the show that we want to hear from, and also maybe veer off into some other topics. Lots of ideas. So once again, thank you all for listening. Hope you have a great, happy, peaceful new year, and let's make some noise in 2022. See you next week.